Good evening, everybody, and welcome to tonight's webinar. Tonight's webinar is entitled The Global State of Women in Football. And tonight we will be talking about leadership, gender equality, inclusion, opportunities, and women in football. And we have the great pleasure of having Reyes Bellver, sports lawyer and CEO of Leadership Women Football, as our speaker tonight. In just a moment, we will formally introduce Reyes, as well as Xavi Bové, who is part of the SBI team and will be co-moderating the session tonight. And in just a moment, we're going to turn it over to our speaker, as I mentioned. Before that, however, we want to run through just some housekeeping details. So the first thing we'd like to make sure is that the sound is coming through properly on your end. So as we normally do with the SBI webinars, we like to find out where you're connecting from. So if you can type in the chat box, where are you connecting from, the country, the city where you're connecting from, that'll give us an idea as to, number one, that the sound is coming through from your end, and number two, we always like to find out where our audience is coming from tonight. So give you a couple minutes just to type in the chat box. So we have Bo from the Netherlands. Hi, Bo. Welcome. Tom from Poland. Welcome, Tom. Katie from the UK. We have Ojonka from Lagos, Nigeria. Welcome. Michelle from Brazil. Welcome, Michelle. Okay, so it looks like the chat box is coming up with the different. We have Annika as well from Manchester. Hello, Annika. Okay, so it looks like the sound is coming through properly on your end, so that's great. Always nice to have a very global and diverse audience for these SBI webinars. As far as the structure for tonight, as I mentioned before, in just a moment, we're going to turn it over to our speaker tonight, Reyes Bellver, who will talk about the global state of women in football. And then she's also going to talk about Leadership Women Football Congress, which is taking place next month. So you'll find out a little bit more about that. And then at the end, we're going to open it up for your questions, because this is a forum for your questions. You're going to be able to interact through the chat and ask your questions to our speaker tonight. That said, I'll just briefly introduce myself. My name is Diego Valdez. I'm the director at the Sports Business Institute Barcelona. And what we do is we specialize in providing training for those that want to start, advance, develop their career in the business side of football. As you may know, from time to time, we have these webinars where we invite experts from the industry to come and share their insights, their knowledge. And tonight, it's our great pleasure to having Reyes here connecting. We also have from the SBI team, Xavi Bové. Xavi is a sports marketing consultant. He specializes in women's football, and he collaborates with a number of clients in the business of sport, among which he is part of the SBI team as well. So at this stage, what I'll do is I'll turn it over to Xavi, who will formally introduce our speaker tonight, and then we will hear from Reyes. So Xavi, over to you.
Thank you, Diego. As you mentioned, this is a privilege to have Reyes Bellver here on the webinar. Just to provide you all an introduction about her profile, Reyes is an enthusiastic, committed, and hardworking advocate for women's sports. She's a Spanish sport lawyer, CEO of the international event Leadership Women Football, that, as you said, it's happening next month in Bilbao. She's also president of the Madrid Sports Law Association. She's the only Spanish professional with a certificate on the FIFA Leadership Program and the WIS Law Coordinator for Spain. In 2018, she was included in the prestigious ranking Who's Who Legal, Sports and Entertaining, featuring the top sports lawyers worldwide. Reyes, thank you very, very much for being here with us today. And please feel free to start your presentation whenever you're ready. Thank you.
Hello, Xavi. Hello, Diego. You hear me?
Hi, Reyes. Welcome. Yes, we can hear you fine. Thank you.
Good, good. So hello to everybody. And first I would like to say thank you for Sports Business Institute for this opportunity and this invitation, and also for the partnership, the great partnership that we have with Leadership Women Football. So thanks so much. I'm really happy for that. And later I would like to talk a little bit about the Congress. But first, I would like to talk a little bit about gender equality and leadership in football. These topics are related, and I would like to show why gender equality is an issue related to leadership. First, I have three whys. My first why is because there is still no country in the world where women have equal access to power and decision making and to decent and well paid jobs. So that is the world that we are living. So it's something not focused on football or sports, but this is a very important issue to think about how can we do to change this. My second why is because globally, women represent 9% of the executive decision making within national football associations. We are talking about the EXCO, the executive decision making bodies, not all the leadership position is a little bit less, but the figure, the number is very low, it's 9%. So this figures come from FIFA, and I will show you later the survey. And my last why is zero because female FIFA president, nor confederation president in the whole football history. That is the number of these positions. So we need to think about women in football. It's more than women's football, and it's related to leadership position because of these numbers and these questions as an introductory that I gave you. Also, you know that women and girls represent half of the world population and also is the half of the potential. So you need to understand that gender equality is not only a fundamental human right, it's more than that, if it's possible, is essential to achieve peaceful societies with full human potential and also sustainable development. Is related to empowering women, and if we empower women and girls and also boys, we can have a better world through football. And I would like to show you here this picture because when I talk about gender equality and diversity, I start all my presentations talking about the 2030 agenda sustainable development goals also. Because as you can see, we have there 17 goals. This is are the goals to change the world, basically. And sports is related to everybody, to everything, to all the goals. The agenda is a plan of action for people, planning, and prosperity. But the sport is in connection with all of this. For example, now I'm focused on number 5, this gender equality. So through football and through sport, we can change gender inequality that we are living, and we are in connection with this agenda that is from the United Nations and is for every country inside the United Nations. So this is really important also because we can show that I call the power of football, no? The goals are a call for action by all countries, poor, rich, and middle income, to promote prosperity and the protection of the planet. No? And sports has long been seen by the UN as an important contributor to this development and these goals. As I told you before, this contribution, it makes to empowering women, young people, also girls, boys, and communities. And also is related to health and education and social inclusion objectives. So this is the power of football. It's more than a human right, and it's more than gender equality as a beautiful picture that we can talk with all your friends or your colleagues. And talking about this gender equality in a global, no, the topic that today, I would like also to divide the presentation into parts to important key objectives. One is women's football, and the other is women in football. I have two pictures there in the presentation to show that it's different than when we are talking about gender equality. Is not only women's football. I know that in the media is everything is related to salary, to collective bargaining agreement. That is something in Spain very important now, but it's something more than women's football and the participation of the players that we have in the first picture. We have also the other picture, the women in football, and this is related to leadership positions. And I have here the picture of Fatima Zamora. This is the FIFA General Secretary. So is a woman, a leader woman with a lot of power inside FIFA, and it's a women in football. So we need to know these people working in the world of football, and we need to know that if we change the leadership positions and we create more diversity and more gender equality, we can help to the other part, the participation, the coaches, the players, and of course referees. So my first part is women's football. I would like, well, it's an extensive topic, this, but I would like to show some figures because I think there's really important. And these figures come from the global snapshot FIFA Women's Football Survey from last year. And as you can see, you can see that there are more people, there are millions of people, girls and women, playing organized football. So the professionalization of women's football is something that is now such a real thing, no? And we have only 7% of total coaches as a female coaches. So we have a long way to to change and to work in coaches and also referees. The last number is for female referees, and it's at 10% of total referees. So we need to improve this data, and also we need to know the data. The data in terms of gender equality are really important, and football is a little bit difficult to find the real numbers, the real figures, because it's a world that the transparency start not a long time ago. So we need more data, and we need to know more the reality to try to change. If we, in the next slide, we have the international transfer. That is updated as last May of last year. And as you can see, the figures are not really big. So we can try to think about the situation, the real situation that we are living with women's football, and not compare with men's football. That is really important. But if you compare with other sports, also the figures are really really low. Sorry. So we need to try to promote the professionalization in all the terms. And I have here because I choose the prize money to put in this presentation because I think it's one of the main important issues that we have in media and talking for the experts in sports, in sports law. And if you can see in this presentation, you have like football, the competition with the biggest disparity in prize money. It's something that FIFA is changing with the prize money for the World Cup, but you can see the Champions League and also the Premier League, the difference between the sports. So that's the reality, that's the football that we have, and some points important with women's football. But don't forget the other part, the women in football, related to leadership and what we have now. So why is important the leadership? Is because women participation in leadership and decision making remains limited in sports and sports related organization. You know that this not focus only in football or in sports. This is the situation for women in workplace. But gender diversity in leadership has the potential, has a big potential to drive superior organizational effectiveness. So there are a lot of studies. I give you some examples there. For example, for Women Matter, to try to explain that the importance to have a diversity plan and equal plan and equal action or a strategy, because it's good for the organization. And this is also good for the football club, federation, or a confederation. This is something not a part of the world of football. And while I was reviewing the gender equality plan action from last year for the Football Federation of Australia, and it's really interesting. I have some two paragraph there because I like so much the definition of leadership in this equality action plan, changing football by increasing the number of females at all levels in all areas of the games. So that's important, and that's the whole picture, no, that I saw before, women's football and women in football. And it goes beyond doing the right things that's related to the fundamental rights that I told you before. It is good for business, no, and leads to better business outcomes. It is about creating a more balanced environment inside a club, inside a federation, inside a company, and which will benefit both men and women alike. So that is also the gender equality in leadership. And also inside the Survive for FIFA that I saw before, I have some figures related to strategy. I think, in my opinion, we need a strategy in terms of improve women's football and women in football. For example, we have here that in most of the, almost the 50% of member associations has a women's football department. That is, I put in red because it's not exclusively for leadership position, because there could be a man working perfectly in a women's football department, but it's something that we need to know as a strategy inside a member association or a federation, and it's almost 50%. But for example, women working in football administration is 28% of total. If you remember my first slide regarding the executive positions, is almost 9%. So the top of the pyramid is really, really difficult, no, to attain a big figures. In the administration in general, there are more women, but we need to improve this. And we have 25% of total female leaders, and we are talking about president, but also general secretary and head of department. That is something that is going to change. For example, FIFA is changing a lot in diversity and gender equality terms, with more women in head of department positions, more women in management positions. So it's something that for member association and federation need to implement as a strategy also. And leadership position is also related to role models, because I put this question there because I would like to give you this question to you to think about a role model of you if in sports. Is this a man or a woman? Because most of the people think about a role model, football player, or a president of the club, or a member of the club or the federation, and is most of the people choose a man. So it's something that we need to try to create more role models, women's, female football players, and also women in leadership position, to create more leadership position and to obtain a change in football. And I put here to a great actress, Edma Watson is not only an actress because she's ambassador for the UN. And I like so much this sentence: how can we affect change in the world when only half of it is invited or pre-welcome to participate in the conversation? This is not only for women, it's also for men, because we need to try to collaborate and to work all together. This is the important challenge that we have. So we need to try to open the world of football to women, but not living apart men that they are already have. So we need to try to work all together to obtain more gender equality in football, in sports, and the world. And I have here some ideas related to leadership and definitions. I like so much to put the definition and to know the real definition and concepts. And for example, for leadership, it's really important to know that leadership is a skill of guiding, a skill of motivating, and also empowering a team. So to guide a team and to create more leaders. And that's the thing that we need in football, we need in sports, we need in football more leaders to understand that a leader must motivate and must empowering a team to create more leaders. And also in relation with this presentation on gender equality is really important, and I would like to point out the inclusive leadership. This is experience and also innovation. And innovation is a very important topic now. We have a lot of congresses and events related to innovation in football, but it's only related to gender equality. And the inclusive leadership is not mixed people, it's not a mix different cultures and to put together to work. Is more than that, is related to understand that they belong and they are feel confident and inspired inside this inclusive team. So this is a challenge. We need more inclusive leadership in football, and we do not confuse diversity also with inclusion. Diversity and inclusion are different, because a business can have a diverse team that is not inclusive, or an inclusive team that is not diverse. So we need a talent here to understand a good leadership in football. And also this is good for the rest of the society and for all the areas. That's the reason that I always said that football can change the world. And through football, we can change a lot of things. And one of these is gender equality. And my last part is some guidelines about diversity, about data. The data, for example, show that diversity improves business, as I told before, and we need to create diversity plans inside companies and also clubs or federations. And there are also some studies, for example, Women in Business from Grant Thornton is really interested to know the figures and the data about the progress on gender diversity. For example, with the last campaigns, Me Too movements, and football players that are fighting, for example, for the US national team. These campaigns on these people that are role models also, they are changing the world, they are changing the situation. And I would like to finish with one sentence: that diversity and gender equality, this is not a women's issue, it's a global issue. And it's very important to understand that it's not only in women's football, that is also women in football. My conclusion about this topic is that true gender equality is when both women and men have a voice. So that's a point that I'm working with my platform, Leaders in Women Football, and then I think later I can talk a little bit with Javi about the Congress.
Thank you, Reyes.
Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. I'm just going to put your microphone on mute for a second so that we don't have an echo. But yeah, no, it's very interesting to hear what you had to share with us tonight because first off, it's important to make the difference, as you said, between women's football and women in football. And at the same time, when you talk about leadership, about guiding, motivating, empowering, I know this is part of your vision and this is part of the Congress that, in fact, we are very proud to be partnering with Leadership Women Football. For those of you that may not know, SBI is the academic partner of this conference, and we are very excited to work together because we share those values and we believe in the vision and the great work that Reyes and her team have been doing with this conference. In just a moment, we'll talk a little bit more about the event that is taking place in Bilbao on March 26th and 27th, for those that may want to know more about it. But at this point, we can open the floor for some questions, and Reyes is here to take some questions, and it's an opportunity for you to ask anything that you want to discuss with Reyes about the role of women in football, of women's football, and leadership, as she was saying overall about finding the right mix in organizations for that equality. So if you have any questions, feel free to type them in the chat box. So we'll give you guys a few minutes to think of some questions that you may want to ask Reyes. In the meantime, Reyes, we can start with a discussion point, which is the Women's World Cup had a lot of media coverage. We all got engaged with the World Cup in France, but sometimes the question comes up, what's next? Because this was something where the whole world was watching, but now we're at a point where we think, how is this going to move forward and carry on that momentum? So what are your thoughts on that?
Important. Okay. I think the most important thing is to have a good strategy, but regional strategy, national strategy. So FIFA has a strategy since 2 years ago, women's football strategy, and every confederation and every federation and every football club that in our city need to create its own strategy related to women's football, because it's different if you are in South America or we are in United States. As you know, it's really, really important. The women's football is something female there. So this is different if you are in Europe, you are in the States, or you are in South America. You need to prepare and to create a strategy. So the figures and the numbers of the World Cup are there. They are really good. But this is the FIFA Women's World Cup. We need to then to understand what can I do in my country, in my city, or in my home.
Great. Xavi,
sorry. Yes, I wanted to bring this topic because Reyes was mentioning a very interesting issue that takes us to a question that was posed by Anika from Manchester. And she said that which specific strategies besides mentoring could be successfully implemented in order to increase the number of women in football in leadership positions? Reyes, you mentioned in the presentation that it's useful to separate women's football from women in football, and you were mentioning right now that each country should have a strategy. Anika from the UK, she asks which strategies could be implemented to increase this presence of women in leadership positions, besides the mentorship that also you do from Leadership Women Football.
Well, I have, for example, we have the experience of quotas inside federation, inside, for example, in FIFA, with the leadership position levels. I think would be really good, for example, a temporary quota, no forever, to try to balance the gender, in women in football. And this is something that, for example, Australia already did with, I think I have here is 40-40-20, is 40% minimum representation of women, 40 men, and the remaining 20 being discretionary. So this kind of proposals are already work, but as I explained before, it depends on the country. So it's something that for Australia is really good, and maybe in Spain we need to think about a quota related more about our society, our experience of about the number of women that would like to work in leadership position. But it's something that we try to put in our strategy, to implement. Is like the first or the big issue that we can do.
Right. We have another question coming in from Jean-Pierre, and he types here in the chat box, how do you understand the famous equal pay subject lately? He goes on to say, is it possible when the markets for men and women are not the same size? Fans, TV rights. What is your view on that? So I guess striking that balance between, finding the right talented people, but at the same time giving the opportunities for everybody to be able to move into those leadership positions.
Well, thanks for the question also. I understand the equal pay that as a lawyer, like a labor law related to employment issues. So I think equal pay is something that we have in our regulation, but it's different when we are talking about competitions. So I can separate the competitions, because when we are talking about competitions, male and female, for me it's not a gender, it's not a question of gender, it's a question of different competitions. And this is also TV rights, the fans, the people that are working there. You need a minimum conditions, you need the minimum facilities, you need a minimum equal pay related both gender doing the same job. But when we have different competition, maybe it's not the same job exactly. So we need to think about that. If we are in the same job or not, in the same competition, and then we need to talk about, this is a gender issue or not, it's a competition issue. So it's different between sports. It's not the same for football that for basketball, and go on.
Thank you, Reyes, for your insights. We have also a question coming from Sasa. She says, what is really the real potential of female football in Africa and Asia? Actually, when we can expect that potential to be part of global movement, especially teams and national teams from Africa? I guess that what Sasa is trying to ask Reyes is whether when we will see countries or continents as Asia and Africa matching the level and growth that global markets as the US, France, or Spain, they are achieving. Obviously, they're having more investment. But in your opinion, Reyes, these markets of Asia and Africa. Which are your thoughts on their evolution and their potential to match the top markets in women's football?
Well, I think it's really important. Thank you for the question because both markers are like waiting for maybe the correct team or the correct people in charge to improve the level, the quality of the strategies and everything. So I think in these areas you need to work a lot in grassroots levels. So the investment is really important, of course, but if you try to connect with the girls, not also women, try to connect football with girls, also at education levels, at the schools, for example, we create the change that they are waiting for. I think that's the point. We need to create more stronger at the base of the pyramid.
Very interesting. Yes, definitely. Many regions that have a lot of potential. Now, Andres has a question, and he talks about women's football in the United States, which for many it can be seen as a benchmark, right? And his question is, well, by the way, he says, congratulations on your presentation on the webinar. So thank you, Andres, for your feedback. He goes on to say, what do you think of the lawsuit between the U.S. women's national team and the U.S. Soccer Federation?
It's a good question, but I don't have the answer. I think it's a big issue there because it's institutional gender inequality. No, it's like they are dealing with more than equal pay or equal price. I think it's more than that. It's facilities and it's during a long time. No, so I don't know, but I think they have a lot of power, and also they are the champions. So we will see. But my opinion is that it's more than football. It's a gender equality issue, a big issue inside the United States.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Reyes. We have another message and question from Victor Ocando. Well, he also thanks Reyes and the SBI team for putting up this webinar. Thank you, Victor, for your feedback. The question that Victor poses is, in your opinion, Reyes, how this initiative could be transferred to inclusion for people with different abilities in football?
Well, thank you, Victor, for your question. I tried to explain a little bit in inclusion or about leadership, no, that is more than equality or gender, no, it's more than gender, but it's really difficult to talk about this topic because it's really big. But of course, inclusion is a really important topic in football, and he knows really well because he's a great advocacy of this important issue. And I think we can change also through football in this topic too. So it's not only gender equality, we can change inclusion and improve with innovation also. I think we need to put in the box innovation and leadership and inclusion, because it's something that when you mix, we have like a recipe or a special ideas to create something to change the situation. No? But through football is a good opportunity to create more opportunities and a change for the world.
Okay, very good. Thank you for your question, Victor, and thank you, Reyes. At this stage, what we can do is obviously here we're scratching on the surface, but a lot of these subjects, a lot of these topics will be discussed in Bilbao on March 26th and 27th for during the Leadership Women Football Congress, the second edition. So perhaps it's a good segue for us to talk about this Congress. And Reyes, can you tell us a little bit more about what we can expect for this second edition?
Yeah, of course. Thank you. Well, it's 2 days, one full day and the second day half day inside San Mamés Stadium. So Leadership Women Football try to talk about three pillars: leadership, woman, and football, but with a integrative vision, no? Working with men, women, and men, and not only talking in a hotel or in a venue that is not related to football. We try to talk about football where the football lives. So we are going to San Mamés Stadium in Bilbao, and we have different topics related to football. It's not only about women's football. We try to talk about topics that are now on news. For example, we have human resources and football and gender, because it's something that is changing with the transparency from, for example, La Liga in Spain or FIFA, UEFA. So something is changing, and we need to talk about that. And we have the chief of human resources of FIFA, Kimberly Morris, with us. Also Nieves Peño from La Liga. Also the manager for Atlético de Madrid in human resources. So we have to try to put leaders from different areas related to football to try to talk topics related to gender, but also to interested points of view. And we have also the what's next related to Women's Football World Cup with Sarai Berman, the chief of women's football of FIFA, and also Laura George, with the Secretary General for the France Football Federation. And of course, our presenter and interview is the best, Xavi Bové. So we have the special male invited to our Congress, and it would be really a really great interview, because it's something that we are talking about what's next after the France World Cup. But we have different topics like innovation, digital transformation in football. This is also a leader with leaders in football. For example, Minerva Santana from La Liga, Iris Cordova from the SIC in Microsoft. We have people also from Bilbao, from the Basque Country, talking about local things. We have a special roundtable or conversation or panel on Thursday afternoon related to the football players' legacy with ex-football players, male and women. And we have, for example, Santiago Solari, we have Aitor Ocio, who is our ambassador, our Leadership Woman ambassador. We have Milene Dominguez from Brazil. We have Aitana Encinas from Real Sociedad. And we have the goalkeeper of Athletic Club Bilbao, the women's team, Ainhoa Tirapu. So it could be really, really interesting to show what happened after the career of the football player is different between a man or women. And then we have a meet and greet, because we try to mix some activities and experiences, not it's only to listen or a round table. We try to mix this kind of things and to talk with the speakers and to be part, no, to give this to all the attendees. And also we try to mix some different topics, like for example different sports and football, to try to not compare but try to talk a little bit more than football. And also we have keynotes from leadership leaders related to football. And this could be next month. We have one more waiting for all of us. And if I can show, I have a special discount for your members or participants from SBI. So we have a code here, and I would like to show you and to give you, because we would like to to promote the leadership in women's football and women football, and to show that through football we can change the world, and that is our commitment. And we will like to invite you to everybody to come to Bilbao next month. Thank you.
Thank you, Reyes. It's a pleasure to hear about the great speakers and panels that your team has put together for the Leadership Women Football Congress in Bilbao. As Reyes mentioned, there is this special code. So for all of the SBI community, you have this special code if you want to join us in Bilbao in March 26th and 27th. You're more than welcome. This is part of the agreement that we have with the conference as academic partners. And as I mentioned at the outset, we're very excited and very glad to be partnering with the conference and with a movement that Reyes is championing, and also putting together some fantastic speakers and panels to empower and to provide those guidelines for leadership, as we've been talking throughout. Xavi, at this point, I'll turn it over to you if you have any final comments or thoughts that you wanted to share with us before we wrap things up with Reyes tonight.
Thank you, Diego. Just wanted to mention that Leadership Women Football is a place to be. If anyone wants to connect, to network, or to know more about what's going on in the football industry regarding to women's football and women in football, I had the opportunity to be there from the first edition last year at Wanda Metropolitano, and I learned a lot. I also did a great contact, so I encourage everyone to be there. If anyone cannot attend, you can also follow the Congress on social media, and if I'm not mistaken, there could be also a streaming, also a transmission. So, but if you can make it, I would encourage everyone, because it's really, really worth it. And personally, it would be a privilege. It will be a privilege to participate together with such a great professionals and executives and leaders in football as Sarai Berman and Laura George. So I thank the organization and Reyes for the opportunity, and I hope to see you all there.
Excellent. So with this, we will wrap things up. Thank you very much for everybody who attended tonight, for your great questions. At this point, thanks also Xavi from the SBI team for taking the time to be here with us tonight. And of course, Reyes, we want to acknowledge you for the great work that you do, for everything that you have envisioned and have put forward with this great Congress and movement that you have with Leadership Women Football, which we are very proud and very humbled to be part of. So thank you for being here tonight, Reyes, and sharing your insight. It's been very, very interesting.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation. It was a pleasure, and thank you, everybody. See you.
Goodbye, everybody. Have a great night. Thank you. All the best.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.